Ladies and gentlemen, the ceremony will start in 1 minute. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, students, faculty of Science Hill, good morning and welcome to the annual Science Hill High School Veterans Day program. I am Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Bradley Davis, the battalion commander of our school's junior ROTC program. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for our national anthem and the presentation of our national colors. When the anthem is played, please place your right hand over your heart. Those in military uniform, stand at attention. We ask that you please remain standing until after the prayer. Let us pray. O Judge of the nations, we remember before you with grateful hearts the men and women of our country who on the day of decision ventured much for the liberties we now enjoy. Grant that we may not rest until all the people of this land share the benefits of true freedom and gladly accept its disciplines. This we ask in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. You may be seated. At this time, I would like to welcome Chief Warrant Officer 4 Retired Jim Dietrich, as well as our school administrators, teaching faculty, and JRTC instructors here at Science Hill. Ladies and gentlemen, November 11th, 2023 marks the 105th anniversary of the end of World War I, or as the people of the time period called it, the war to end all wars. Up to this point in time, this global explosion of violence and destruction was the most deadly conflict in human history, with casualties exceeding 40 million people. It is hard to imagine another conflict of a similar scale. However, just 20 years later, another conflict would see more than 85 million deaths. The scale of war is incomprehensible. In a war where millions died in single battles, taking place over weeks, and where those same battles transformed the earth into an aberration of nature, cities, peoples, and entire nations were destroyed at the hand of an empire and conquest. Yet it is easy to forget the individual, the soldier. The American soldier may be from any point on the map of our nation, from the East Coast, the West Coast, or any state. Men and women throughout our history have left their homes to travel to distant foreign shores to defend our nation and interest from those who wish to do harm. Because of their sacrifices, we can live in the most privileged nation to have ever existed in human history. Veterans Day should be more than just honoring our veterans, but also a day to reflect the nation they served. Not only should we understand the sacrifice our veterans give to protect us and our values, we should be thankful for what we have in the first place. Without our servicemen and women fighting for us, we would be without the liberties and opportunities we enjoy today. I would now like to introduce Chief Warrant Officer 4 Retired, Jim Dietrich. Jim enlisted in the Army in 1974 to fulfill his dream of becoming an Army paratrooper. After serving 2 years with the 2nd Ranger Battalion at Fort Lewis, Washington, he was accepted to the Army Aviator Flight Training Program at Fort Rucker, Alabama. He graduated in 1978 as a warrant officer and was assigned to the 101st Airborne Division at Fort Campbell, Kentucky as a scout pilot. While there, he was selected with a small group of other scout pilots to develop a new, rapidly deployable Army Aviation Night Fighting Unit that was known to become the current 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, also known as the Night Stalkers. This is a volunteer unit, and Jim served there for 15 years in many roles, including liaison officer to SEAL Team 6 and as an instructor pilot, but primarily as a flight leader performing counter-terror and contingency operations worldwide. In 1995, he left the Night Stalkers and returned to Fort Rucker, Alabama to join the Army Safety Center as an accident investigator and the subject matter expert for special operations. In 1997, he declined a promotion to Chief Warrant Officer 5 and chose instead to retire from active duty to begin a new career as a Department of the Army civilian. As such, he served 14 years with the Headquarters Army Special Operations Command at Fort Bragg, North Carolina as a pilot, aviation safety manager, and then as the Command Safety Director. In 2011, he transferred to the Headquarters Army Forces Command, where he performed in various positions, including their Command Safety Director. In 2021, he fully retired following 22 years of active duty service and 23 years of Army civilian service. His awards include the Army Legion of Merit, the Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Medal, and 11 Joint Service or Army Service Commendation Medals for counter-terror or contingency operations. He was awarded 5 Joint Meritorious Unit Awards and 4 Armed Forces Expeditionary Medals. As an Army civilian, he was awarded the highest award the Secretary of the Army can give a civilian, the Distinguished Service Award. His qualification tabs and badges include the Master Army Aviator Badge, Ranger Tab, Air Assault Badge, and U.S. and British Paratroop Wings. He has performed in 101 military parachute jumps and is qualified in 9 types of helicopters or airplanes. Please welcome Chief Warrant Officer 4, Jim Dietrich.
Good morning. If I fail to make eye contact with everybody, please forgive me because I'm a little bit surrounded here. Did you ever have a vacation planned and you were really excited about it and then something popped up and it was canceled? That's probably happened to more than one of you in here. Well, I'd like to tell you about one of my Christmas vacations that was canceled. And it was canceled not just for me, but about 1,000 other service members that were sent to Panama to participate in Operation Just Cause, which was the invasion of Panama. Before that operation took place, there was one other operation that had to be conducted, and the timing was perfect. As you see up there on the screen, That was Operation Acid Gambit, and it took place the night of the invasion on 20 December 1989. On the 16th of December, I was at home with my wife and my daughter, and it was a Saturday, and I was about to start my leave on Monday morning. My parents and my brother were traveling in from Arizona, and we hadn't seen them in many years, and we were really looking forward to that. And the evening, the phone rang, and the recorded message at the other end said, "Come to work, come to work, come to work." And that was the code word to bring people in that we were going to activate our alert package. That package was commonly known as the Silver Bullet. Next slide, please. As I changed into my uniform and kissed my wife and child goodbye, on the drive into work, I was wondering what the alert was for. And I pretty much figured it was Panama. Can you go back, Mike? Why Panama? Well, for many, many years, there had been a dream of creating a passage through the narrowest part between Central and South America. Many countries had tried and failed, but in 1904, the U.S. government took charge of the project, and in 10 years, they had built the Panama Canal, which was considered an engineering marvel. That canal was still being used and is still used today. Approximately 15,000 ships a year go through the canal. Because the U.S. had built that, and it was a strategic asset, there was joint ownership and management between the U.S. government and the Panamanian government. But as of late, things had kind of gone south. The country had two dictators in a row that had turned the country into a haven for drugs and running guns. They also were becoming extremely anti-American. They wanted the complete control of the canal. Why? Money. Simple as that. 4 MH6 lift, 4 AH-6 gunships, and 1 Black Hawk helicopter that would fall back. He was going to be the command and control aircraft. While we were there, someone ran in and said, "They know we're coming, we're going early." Well, that set up a big scramble. Everybody started grabbing their gear and heading out to the aircraft. I waited a little bit, made sure all my guys were out, and then I picked up my stuff and I was heading out the door. And a major from our operations section ran out and said, Jim, don't go. He said they have put a heavy caliber machine gun on a roadblock that is on your direct route into the prison. He said, what do you want to do? So it's left to me to determine whether I want to change the route for the aircraft, which I could have done with one code word, which was drop kick. They would have followed me. But the problem was the timing. The timing would have been off, and we risked the life of the American citizen, Kurt Muse, that was in the prison. The other thing was that it would have seriously messed up the gunbirds because they had pre-planned targets that they were going to hit. One was in the military headquarters that was right next door to the prison, and they were also going to sweep minigun fire across 2 apartment block roofs because up from those roofs, you could fire easily down to the roof of the prison. So I said, we're going to go on the original route, even though it was going to risk potentially the loss of aircraft. I headed out, went out of the hangar, and the whole airfield was almost completely black. All you could hear was some running helicopters. And we had run helicopters at odd times during the night the whole time we were there, just so that the Panamanians would not know that this was the night we were going. I got out to my helicopter, we lined up, and at the new takeoff time, turned to the takeoff heading, and off we go. I've got my 4 aircraft, the lift birds in trail, and I've got 2 gunbirds on either side and the Black Hawk at the back. We take off, and we start up on the route. Next slide, please. The last set of hills that we cleared, right in front of us, you could see Panama City, and that's exactly what it looks like, all laid out in front of us. My problem now was, one, find the prison, and number two, try to identify where that heavy machine gun was. So that was my focus. But while I was looking for that, there was a lot of other things going on. The gunbirds on the left and right side began moving, accelerating ahead of us. They started engaging roadblocks. They put minigun fire on the top of the 2 apartment blocks, and they fired into the main Panamanian military headquarters that was right next door to the prison. The hope was that firing into that headquarters would basically confuse the Panamanians and keep them in the headquarters rather than running out and trying to rush the prison right next door. When the gunbirds did that, the 2 aircraft on the right-hand side, the first fired his load. He turned off to go back to rearm. The second aircraft comes in, he starts shooting, and he gets shot down. He lands right inside the military headquarters compound. They're inside. They hit the ground, they slide, the aircraft bangs into a concrete post, they get out, and the helicopter catches fire. Both of them were injured but could move, and believe it or not, they found a way out through the 12-foot fence and were able to link up with American forces that showed up shortly thereafter. No one knew that gunbird was shot down. I'm proceeding into the target. I now see it, and I'm looking for that machine gun position. I don't see it. But what I didn't know, and the major that told me about that gun position didn't know, there was a Delta sniper team that was watching the front of the prison. They wanted to keep it, nobody knew, because they didn't want the information getting out and alerting the Panamanians. They saw the machine gun position, and when the Panamanians heard us, they came up to man the gun, and that sniper takes out the first guy. Another one came up to man the gun. The sniper takes out the second guy. No one came to man the gun after that. Following that, they then shot the generator that provided the lighting for the prison. So now, as I'm flying in, it goes dark. But night vision goggles, it actually helps. The first 2 aircraft, my aircraft and the second aircraft, we land on the roof. The operators are off in a flash, less than 2 seconds, and we are gone. My number 3 and number 4 land on the roof. They drop their guys, they take up, and they follow me. We now go to hold away from the prison so we don't get in the way of the operations there. Plus, we probably figured there was going to be some heavy enemy fire. And as soon as Delta got off, they took positions on the roof. There was a small building on the top, like a cupola. They went up to it, blew the door, went down 2 flights of stairs to the 3rd floor of the prison, killing 3 guards on the way. One of them gave up, and they tied him up like a Thanksgiving turkey. They didn't kill him. When they went to Kurt Muse's cell, they blew the cell door, but it didn't completely open. So a breacher came up and finished the job with a shotgun. They got the cell door open. There was bullets flying from outside the prison towards the prison, and they had to stay low on the floor because there were actually bullets coming in through the windows. And that was for the whole front of the prison. They had a backpack with them. They opened it up. They throw a helmet on Kurt. They put a ballistic vest on him and start running him back up to the roof. As they're going up there, they make a phone call, they make a radio call and tell them that they're ready to pick up Kurt and the troops. We hear the call, and I lead my first 2 birds back to the roof. Probably 2 to 3 miles before we even got there, I could hear and see the gunfire. It was much, much heavier than I expected. But we go in, we land on the roof. Next slide, please. And this is an actual print. You can see the gentleman on the right there with the blue clothing on. That's Kurt Muse. And he made a comment that when they brought him up to the helicopter and they're going to stick him in the back, he said the door was so small he didn't think he'd fit through it. But anyway, they put him in the back of the aircraft. My operators get on the outside and they hook up, and I'm gone. The aircraft behind me, he loads his up, and he's getting ready to take off. As soon as we clear, the number 3 and number 4 come in to pick up the rest of the people off the roof. Unfortunately, as usually happens, you can offload the aircraft a lot faster than you can load it up. There's a lot of people moving around on the roof, etc. So as number 3 is coming in with number 4 behind him, my company commander and my very good friend, Major Rick Bowman, was shot. He took an AK bullet in his shoulder that went all the way around the bone and into his lung. But Chalk number 3, the other pilot continued the mission, landed on the roof, and they picked up their troops, and they were gone. Now, while that was going on, I was having some problems. When we took off of the roof, one of the things I was very concerned about was, in the satellite photography, it showed poles outside the prison, and where you usually have poles, you've got wires, either electrical or something else. And we picked up, very, very heavy, turned the tail, and went off the side of the prison, and it's an aerodynamics condition. I won't try to explain it, but basically you're going to fall until the helicopter gets clean air and then can climb out. We come across the roof, I look down, there's wires. So I bumped the power a little bit, we cleared the wires, and the engine started to bleed down. Directly ahead of us was one of the main city cemeteries. I'm talking big headstones. I knew that if we went into that graveyard, it was pretty much going to be graveyard for us. No one was walking away from the aircraft because it would have been destroyed. So I turned hard right towards the 2 apartment blocks, and I see in front of me a narrow alley in between the 2 buildings. And the aircraft is slowly descending. I can't do anything about it. We come down and we land gently right in front of the mouth of that alley. That alley was used by the people that lived there to park their cars. There were washing lines, there were power lines, all kinds of things. And at this point in time, I know, because we're so heavy, I just can't pick the aircraft up, turn, and go. That's not the way it works. I'd have to get like a running start. So when I touch down, my operators jump off the aircraft and immediately go into a defensive position. I knew what I wanted to do, but they didn't know what I wanted to do. So I tell them, get back on the bird, get back on the bird. They get on. Unfortunately, a couple of them didn't hook back up. So now, if you saw the pictures of the little bird, there's no wheels on that aircraft. It skids. So I start driving the helicopter underneath the power lines and the washing lines down the alley. It was so tight in there that some of the operators had to lift their legs up so they didn't hit the fenders on the cars. We get to the end of the alley, I kind of poke the nose out, and I look to the left and it looks pretty clear. To the right, they had set up a bus as a blocking position, so we weren't going that way. I pull the aircraft out, I turn it 90 degrees. I asked my co-pilot, I said, does it look good to you? He said, yes, and off we go. We start climbing up. We get to about 30 feet, and we're taking fire. One of the operators on the right-hand side got hit in the gut with a bullet. He starts peeling off. He's going to fall from the aircraft, and the operator next to him grabs a hold of him. He didn't have his tether on either. They both tumble into the street. As we continue forward, we continue taking fire. One of the operators takes a bullet in the seat. it goes underneath and hits him in the back of the leg. And then we took a hard hit. The aircraft starts spinning very hard left, which to me means that they probably got our tail rotor. That's the little rotor in the back, and the only purpose for it is to stop the fuselage from turning in the same direction as the main rotor. I just followed what was natural instinct because I had done these kind of emergency procedures before. I rolled the power off, which is the only way you can get it to stop turning, and we crash 50, 30 feet to the ground. We land very, very hard. In fact, we landed so hard, it broke one of the skids off. Next slide, please. Now we're in a mess. We had 2 of the Delta guys were shot. One, when we landed, got off the aircraft, and you can see it's broken on the right-hand side, the skid. He took a whack in the head from the main rotor blade, but luckily it was only a glancing blow. He had a lot of blood showing, but he wasn't that badly hurt, but very confused for the remainder of the mission. Also, one of the other operators, when we crashed, the skid on the left-hand side, it actually landed on his foot, about the forward part of his foot. So, and he managed to, just by kicking, get the skid off. So we've got one with a crushed foot, one with a concussion, one is shot in the gut, and one shot in the leg. That's like almost all my passengers. I had taken a hit in the face when we landed. My ballistic plate came up and hit me hard in the face, but it felt like my jaw was broken, but otherwise I was okay, and my co-pilot was just fine. The one guy I was very happy that was not injured was Kurt Muse in the back of the helicopter. So we clear the helicopter, there's still gunfire going on, and we move to the other side of the road where you can kind of see the car parked there. And we set up a little perimeter. Now, our evacuation, if an aircraft went down, was we were going to have a Black Hawk come and pick us up. But it wasn't from that location, which meant that people had to be able to walk. We couldn't take these folks because of the number of injuries we had. I went back to the helicopter, which was still trying to shut down. The linkages had been damaged, and I couldn't shut the thing off when we got out of the aircraft. But eventually, it ran out of fuel in the fuel lines, and it did stop. But while it was still turning, I went back to the helicopter. In the back, we had these little mobile, like walkie-talkie radios, MX360s they were called, and I transmitted a call in the blind, and one Air Force combat controller heard me give the directions on where we were located. Additionally, one other American, some of the ground forces that were moving now as part of the invasion force, had seen my helicopter go down, and he notified a Delta operator that was with them as a liaison officer. So within about 20 minutes, 2 armored personnel carriers show up, load us up, and they take us up to a hospital pad at Gorgas Hospital in Panama City. And there a Black Hawk came and picked us up, and we go back to the airfield, and the mission is done. It was considered a success, even though we had casualties, because our primary objective was to get that American citizen, Kurt Muse, out of the prison, and that was a success. When everything was over, Kurt actually asked to go back to the medical tents where the folks were being triaged, and he couldn't believe that so many people had been hurt to rescue just him. Next slide, please. That same night, we lost one more gunbird. Unfortunately, both the pilots were killed. John Hunter, he had been married less than a month. Sonny Owens was a very good friend. Major Rick Bowman, that I mentioned, that was in the 3rd helicopter in my flight, he did okay. And the 2 pilots from the Little Bird gun that went inside the military headquarters, they were medevaced out. That night, we lost 3 of our Little Birds. There was only 30 of those aircraft in the entire Army. We lost 10% of our fleet in one night. Next slide, please. But you know, when you do these things, you don't often get to see the fruit of your labor. This was the Muse family. I'm on the right, the handsome guy right here. This is my beautiful wife who's here today, and stuck in the back there, a humble man that he is Kurt. This is his son, his daughter-in-law, his wife, and 2 of their 4 grandchildren. Every year, he sends a text message to all the operators that were involved in his rescue. And he thanks us every year that he gets to see and be alive for his kids and grandkids. Johnson City, this is a great photograph, but do you know who you don't see in this photograph? You don't see the crew chiefs. You don't see the mechanics. You don't get to see the electricians. You don't get to see the fuel handlers. Can't fly without gas. You don't get to see the ammo dogs, as we called them. They actually, from my unit, jumped in with the Rangers and set up refuel and rearm points for the helicopters in the middle of nowhere. You don't get to see the medics who worked on everybody. And most importantly, you don't get to see the food service guys who fed us every day. Now, Johnson City is not a military town. You don't have a big installation nearby, but when you do, you can see people start disappearing. And let me tell you, there's a lot of people right now that are going to be spending their Christmas and New Year's in the Middle East. So what can you do to thank vets? Well, if you see an old guy like me wandering around with an Army hat on, you can be pretty sure they're a vet. But another thing you have here is you have a really good VA hospital. And one of the things that would be really nice, some of those guys can't get out. They have injuries, bad injuries. It would be nice if someone would take the time and just go by and say thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our veterans serve as part of our nation's rich heritage, which includes a unique service song and flag for each branch of service. We will now introduce each branch of service, followed by the cadets presenting them. The United States Army flag is being presented by Cadet Captain Shane Niemeyer. The United States Marine Corps flag is being presented by Cadet Second Lieutenant Kenneth Miller. The United States Navy flag is being presented by Cadet Private First Class Cristiano Hackney. The United States Air Force flag is being presented by Cadet Private First Class David Pusatier. The United States Coast Guard flag is being presented by Cadet Second Lieutenant Damon Keeley. As our very own award-winning Science Hill Concert Band plays each respective service song, I ask that each veteran stand when your branch's service song is played. The band will now play the service melody. The United States Army. United States Air Force. The United States Coast Guard. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a round of applause in appreciation for our veterans. Next is our wreath ceremony. Every year, as is our tradition here at Science Hill, the Hilltopper Cadet Battalion presents a floral wreath to the spouse of a veteran. By doing this, we recognize the service of all veterans who have served our nation so honorably, as well as their spouses who support their military families by being constantly uprooted and worrying about their deployed spouse, all while keeping normalcy at home. Presenting our wreath today is Cadet Sergeant Aiden Nuru. Receiving the wreath is Mrs. Claudia Roselot. Mrs. Roselot was married to Sergeant First Class John Roselot, who served our nation from 1976 to 1996. During this time, Sergeant First Class Roselot was a combat engineer with assignments in Germany and Fort Riley, Kansas. Selected for recruiting school in 1983, he later performed recruiting duties in Detroit, Michigan, and Beckley, West Virginia. After retiring from the Army, he served the local Science Hill community as the Army JROTC teacher for several years. It is customary for taps to be played at military funerals and wreath-laying ceremonies to bid farewell to our fallen comrades. Taps is a traditional bugle call signifying the end of duty for a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, or Coast Guardsman. Cadet Sergeant Daniel Keller will now play taps. Will everyone please rise and place your right hand over your heart? Personnel and military. Thank you. Please be seated. Next is our POW MIA ceremony. The flag is currently being presented by Cadet Sergeant Isaac Bienemy. More than 83,000 Americans are missing today. Hundreds of military and civilian personnel work around the clock to locate our fallen heroes and return them to the United States. 8 Science Hill graduates are considered missing. They are Captain Davis, U.S. Army, class of 34. Flight Officer McCart Jr., U.S. Air Force, class of 36. Second Lieutenant Crow, U.S. Air Force, class of 36. First Lieutenant Corpening Jr., U.S. Air Force, class of 37. First Lieutenant McCamey, U.S. Air Force, class of 39. First Lieutenant Agee Jr., U.S. Air Force, class of 40. Aviation Machinist, Second Class Andrews, U.S. Navy, class of 41. Sergeant Cloyd, U.S. Air Force, class of 43. Let us take a moment of silence to remember their sacrifice. Thank you. Now presenting the 2023 Iron Crusaders drill team. Since 1935, drill has been a key facet of the discipline and teamwork embodied by the Science Hill drill team. From left to right, Cadet Corporal Gage Blankenship, Cadet Staff Sergeant Colby Harney, Cadet Sergeant Major Seth Black, and Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Bradley Davis. These cadets will be performing with a 1903 Springfield drill replica rifle weighing 9 pounds. Your applause is welcome at any time. Today's soloists include Bradley Davis and Seth Black. Bradley Davis has led the Iron Crusaders drill team since 2021, guiding his team to multiple local, regional, and national awards, along with the team's deputy, Seth Black. Both cadets have won multiple awards, ranging from first place regional solos to 9th place national duels. Here are today's soloists. Ladies, gentlemen, distinguished guests, and school administration, I want to thank you for attending today's Veterans Day ceremony. Students will now be dismissed by our principal, Dr. Carter.
Thank you, students, very much. You are now dismissed. Head back to second period. When the bell rings, go to third period. Thank you.